Well, we made it to the weekend, folks, and what a wild week it was. We had an election Monday night, and then the fallout of everything that happened. Everyone's just trying to wrap their heads around what in the world happened. The Conservatives lost, Poilievre lost his seat, and then an MP stepped down from his seat in Alberta so that Poilievre could slide in and try to get a by-election going. And Carney said, I will let him do that. He can go ahead. We will get that by-election done as soon as possible so he can get a seat in the House of Commons. And everyone's just kind of like, what in the world is going on? I'm sure you're not alone. Me and Reg jumped on last night. Reg took the first half hour to talk about some very important issues and what things are going on. And then I was able to jump on. We were able to talk more about Pierre losing a seat, Pierre going to Alberta and getting a safer seat, trying to get back in the House of Commons. Should Poilievre stay on as leader? Like, we talked about it all last night. And then, of course, the talk was around the Mark Carney opening press conference as him as the official elected prime minister. And admittedly, it left a lot of people scratching their heads, especially those on the right, because it was almost the opposite of everything that he has ever believed in. It was the opposite of everything he's ever written about in his books, that he was all of a sudden taking a conservative approach, essentially going word for word of the Pierre Poilievre platform through the election. And people were just like, could it be all that bad? Maybe Mark Carney will actually be good. We are going to discuss all that today. But before we do that, please take the time, like, share, and subscribe. We love all of you. It really helps the channel to grow, especially as we are continuing to navigate these choppy waters in our current country and our current political circumstances, and trying to keep you informed of what is really going on that the mainstream won't tell you. Now let's get into the story, shall we? So as I said, Mark Carney gave his opening address, and he hit some very significant points that has been huge pain points for the Canadian population. One of which he talked about how he's looking to transform the economy and help the country be better again from an economic perspective. 2, that he's going to fight crime and secure the border. 3 is that he's going to be looking to cap immigration. And then 4, that he will not, and I repeat, will not be working with the NDP to get things passed. So when you hear all those things at first glance, you're just like, what is going on? What's his angle here? What is currently happening? And that's what we're going to talk about today, because I have to admit, a Mark Carney prime ministerial term is going to be vastly different from a Justin Trudeau. What have we been saying from the beginning? Mark Carney is a smarter version of Justin Trudeau. They still believe in the same things. Mark Carney is just going to be a lot more cunning with how he goes about them. So he's going to say what he needs to say to bring everyone's defenses down, and then slowly bring in net zero policies through the back door without people really realizing it and people who are asleep at the wheel. Right now, today, his opening press conference, he's actually trying to be a politician, a pre-Trump politician. What do I mean by that? Well, remember, politics were really dry. People would, we'd focus on the election for a month or two, and then we'd go on our merry ways and let the politicians do what they do. We ignore them forever. And then we don't care about them until another 4 years comes around. We have to vote for them again. That's what politics used to be like. Now, since Trump came around, politics has turned in from being a dry sport to now being a key piece of entertainment in our pop culture, both in America, which has always been, but even more so in America. And as well, that culture has been transitioned into Canada. So people are a lot more vigilant. People are a lot more interested in what is happening. That's why we're seeing shows like this grow so much. It's because people are locked in more than ever about what is going on in politics. And I believe what we're seeing here is Mark Carney wants to make politics boring again, to lull us to sleep so that when the time comes, he can finally bring stuff in that people aren't going to really notice. And then boom, before you know it, policies are going to have come in that weren't beneficial to Canadians, and we're going to be able to do nothing about it. It is fascinating, but also I'll show you what I mean, and we'll start off with the first thing. First off, he talks about getting a mandate. He starts about getting a mandate and how he's committed to transforming the economy.
As I've been clear since day one of my leadership campaign in January, I'm in politics to do big things, not to be something. And now that Canadians have honored me with a mandate to bring about big changes quickly, I will work relentlessly to fulfill that trust. As I stressed on election night, I am committed to working with others, governing as a team in cabinet and caucus, and working constructively across parties in Parliament, working in real partnership with provinces, territories, and Indigenous peoples, and bringing together labor, business, and civil society to advance the nation-building investments that will transform our economy.
Even the first part of that should concern you. I've received a mandate to do big things. I only came into politics to do big things, not just to be something. The problem is, Mark Carney, it's hard to do big things when you have a minority government. And when you have a minority government, that isn't a mandate. I hate to say it. Yes, your party may have received 8.5, 8.6 million votes, biggest in Canadian history. But do you know what also happened? Conservatives also received 8.1 million votes, which is also the second largest in Canadian history. So it's not exactly a mandate. People are not on board with this, not on board with you. They don't buy it. And so whatever, I talked about this earlier on this week. Mark Carney's going to be pushing it. Media's going to be pushing it. And you're going to see it more and more. Well, Mark Carney's got a mandate. He can do whatever he wants, even though he has a minority government. 3 seats short of a majority. Who cares? It's still a minority government. You do not have a mandate. You will have to work with others, though, which I appreciate him saying there. But there is no mandate. Don't get it twisted. And again, it's all about breaking down the nuance of what he is saying. And that's what we're going to do, continue on here. Before we continue, though, I would suggest going to watch Moose on Loose's video from this morning, where he breaks down the relationship between Donald Trump and Mark Carney, and he expands on the research that both him and we did a couple months ago about his connection to Jared Kushner and the building that was for sale in New York City and how Brookfield helped facilitate that sale as a favor. It was kind of weird. Well, David then built on that and released that this morning, which was fantastic work. So go ahead and watch that in addition to this, because I think it all kind of brings it off, gives you a fuller picture of what we're currently dealing with right now in our country. But it's the next thing. Talking about fighting crime. Got people scratching their heads like, what is going on? What is this plan here? They talk about fighting crime, and they only really talked about fighting crime during the election in terms of securing and clamping down on law-abiding gun owners. Like that was them talking about fighting crime. He expands on that a little more, which is a little different than what he talked about in the campaign, which was interesting.
My government will focus on keeping Canada secure as a sovereign nation and Canadians safe in their communities. We'll build a stronger Canadian armed forces to protect Canadians, defend our sovereignty, and support our allies. We'll strengthen our border security with 1,000 more CBSA officers, as well as scores of dog teams, drones, and scanners to fight the traffic of guns and drugs. We'll strengthen Canadian law enforcement by hiring 1,000 more RCMP officers and giving law enforcement more tools to fight crime. We will toughen the criminal code and bail laws for those threatening the safety of Canadians, including making bail harder to get for those charged with stealing cars, with home invasion, human trafficking, and smuggling.
Was that not word for word of what you heard from Pierre Poilievre through the campaign? We're going to bolster our borders, add scanners, increase our specialty teams, increase our CBSA agents. We are going to look to clamp down on crime, clamp down on the theft, clamp down on the trafficking. Like all of it, that was word for word Pierre Poilievre's platform. You didn't hear a dang thing Mark Carney saying during the campaign. So this was like, whoa, where is this coming from? This is left field, especially. He almost scoffed at the idea during the campaign. Almost scoffed at the idea leading into this, that like this wasn't a real issue. It's not really going on. Like he'd barely talked about the fentanyl issues. Barely talked about the trafficking issues. All of a sudden, now he's talking about it. Now he's going to solve it. What is really going on here? Why is this? And that's why I'm saying you cannot allow him to take down your guard, because everything he's been talking about is the opposite to what he's saying during this address. So what is the long-term goal here for Mark Carney? This next piece of the address where he talks about immigration. And this was also interesting.
We will return our immigration to sustainable levels by capping the total number of temporary workers and international students at less than 5% of Canada's population by the end of 2027. That's a sharp drop from the recent high of 7.3%, and this will help ease strains on housing, on public infrastructure, and social services. At the same time, we will work to attract the best talent in the world to build our economy.
We are looking to cap immigration and bring it down to sustainable levels so that housing and our infrastructure can catch up. I mean, cool. It's great to hear. What's frustrating about this, though, is we were being literally called racist for suggesting such a thing even 2 months ago. But now Mark Carney says it, I guess it's not racist anymore. And if you even look into what he actually says, we're going to make sure that temporary foreign workers and international students don't cap any more than 5% of our Canadian population. He didn't even talk about immigration. He talked about temporary foreign workers and international students, not immigration, and not getting any higher than 5% and dropping it below 5% of our population. Well, if you do that math, I don't know, that's still 2 million people. Is that really solving the issue? So first of all, he doesn't even deal with the actual immigration issue. He just talks about temporary foreign workers and international students, but doesn't talk about immigration. And don't worry, we're gonna make sure it stays below 5%, which is 2 million people a year. Is that per year? Is that overall? Is it like we'll always make sure that there's no more than 5% that make up our country? Like, is it, what are we accepting for it? Like, there's not a whole lot of clarity around this, especially when you have one of his advisors that is a part of the Century Initiative that Mark Carney has believed in and given lip service to, and so much has been a part of. What is the actual plan? This shouldn't settle you. It should be unsettling to you because there's a lack of clarity. You don't know where it's going and you don't fully understand it. So what is the actual plan? Again, he gave a lot of lip service to conservative platform ideas, conservative policy ideas, but we don't actually know what he's going to do. Quite frankly, again, as we said, they're going to come back here in mid-May. They're only going to be in the House of Commons for about 20 days, and then they're on summer break. We won't see them again till the fall. So this, I believe, this is just speculation, that this is a plan to make sure people don't get angry. People aren't mad going into the break, so they don't have a firestorm to deal with when they get back. He's trying to tamper emotions, try to chill people out, and trying to make politics boring again, so to make it easier for him to make moves in the future. He even did so much as to calm down the nerves around the NDP and the Liberals teaming up to get things done. And this was a fascinating question and a fascinating answer.
Mr. Carney, will you be pursuing a formal governing pact of any kind with the NDP?
No. Short answer, no.
And why not?
Why? That's my response. Is we campaigned on a very clear set of objectives, very clear policies to back those up, and we received the highest number of votes in Canadian history. Yes, it is not quite a majority, but highest number of votes. As I said moments ago, majorities in 7 of the 10 provinces, seats in all the provinces, highest vote totals and deputy counts in a number of those provinces. And it's also a style of governing as well, which is in order to do what we need to do as a country, we will need to work in partnership with all the provinces, with Indigenous peoples. Yes, obviously, by definition in Parliament, we will need to get majority support to pass legislation. But this is legislation that Canadians, or at least we will be putting forth legislation that's consistent with our platform and consistent with the requirements of the time. And I will remind that it's not just words. We are in a crisis. You know, if you look at the terrible manifestation of that today in Oshawa for the GM workers, 2,000 GM workers, and I'll just express my deepest sympathy for them. And
not going to work out a pact with the NDP. We're going to work with everybody. We're going to make sure legislation gets passed. We're going to make sure that we cooperatively move things forward. Because guess what, guys? We're in a crisis. He's laying the foundation where I'm going to have to make moves to make sure everyone's happy, to make sure that people's jobs get saved. I'm going to make sure that we're going to have to make some sweeping moves to make sure that we get done what we need to get done because we're in a crisis. At first glance, what he said here in this press conference would be kind of easing the tensions a bit. But when you actually listen and you focus on the words, it's actually going to leaving more questions than answers, leading you to have to really keep a focus on what they do moving forward. You're going to have to keep an eye out for articles like this, where majority of Canadians say misinformation affected a federal election. More than 3/4 of Canadians believe misinformation had an impact on the outcome of the federal election, a new poll suggests. A Leger poll, which sampled more than 1,500 Canadian adults from April 29th to May 1st, suggests that 90% of people think false information or misinformation had a major impact on the election. My friends, more of this stuff gets posted, more of this stuff gets published, and more things like this gain traction. This Liberal government is going to have their reasoning, is going to have the backing from the people that they need in order to bring in censorship laws to quell misinformation. As I said, keep an eye out for this type of stuff. But it was fascinating, again, the talking points that Carney hit on, that even CBC were like, this is kind of weird.
Rosie, a lot there.
But that might have been the throne speech, actually.
It might have been less flowery.
Yeah.
It was very economical, but it kind of boils down to axe the tax, stop the crime, build the homes, and fix the budget. When you look at a lot of the core priorities, it's an interesting shift in this Liberal government stance.
Even CBC, David Cochrane acknowledges that Carney just spoke on all the core aspects of Poilievre's campaign and what he was going to do. And now he's going to claim that he's going to do it. We know, look at a lot of high-level skepticism, especially when this man talked about how he supported and actually advocated even more of a clampdown of the Emergencies Act on the protesters of the convoy in 2022. And even when he talked about the freedom of speech, we know he doesn't actually believe in this stuff. So where is he actually going? And that, my friends, is what we're going to keep a close eye on. Enjoy your Saturday. I'm going to enjoy watching my Halifax Thunderbirds take on Saskatchewan lacrosse tonight. Home game, round 2, game 1. It's going to be a fantastic time. And have yourselves a good one. I'm out.